Hello and welcome to the first episode of Carolyn's Wellness Corner. I'm your host, Carolyn McLean, and I'm so excited to have you here as we kick off this journey together. I want this podcast to be a safe and open talk. I want to be all about things wellness, fitness, holistic health, and personal growth, but also knowing the balance between when wellness becomes toxic and it's okay to have those days where you wake up at 12 and you order McDonald's and not everything has to be perfect. We see so much online about the whole my 80-20, and it's okay if you're a 50-50, if you're a 30-70, if you're a 90-10. Just do what's best for you, and not everything has to be perfect. So I'm excited to kick off this podcast. I'm excited for where it's going to go. With this being the first episode, I might yap a little bit too long or not yap enough, and I'm just learning as we're going. So again, thank you so much for being here. Let me introduce myself. I have always had a love for wellness, fitness. I've always been interested in food, which is crazy to think that from a young age I was asking my parents, why aren't we eating organic? I didn't even know what organic meant, but I saw on the TV and I heard that it was better for you, and I questioned my parents, why aren't we eating organic? I grew up somewhat of an athlete. There's certain sports that I love and certain sports that I just could care less about. But I also grew up as a theater kid and was super creative. I'm 26 years old and live in Vancouver, Canada. I had most of my growing up years in Ontario, and 2 weeks after high school graduation, I made the move out to Vancouver, and I have loved it here. Now, I do miss Ontario from time to time, and as I'm getting older, I do miss my sister a lot. My one sister lives in my hometown, and then my younger brother lives in Victoria, so luckily I have him, and my dad lives in BC too. So it's good, but as I'm getting older, I'm like, I miss Ontario, and I kind of miss my friends, and I miss my sister, and my hometown has always had like a love-hate relationship internally for me. I love my friends, I love my family, but I don't love the culture there. I don't love how certain things are done there. It's a very religious town, and it was definitely a culture shock when I moved to Vancouver, which is crazy to think, but it's just different. And it's booming now because it is like an hour and a half-ish from Toronto, which is good. Like it's developing, which is awesome to see. But I don't know. It's just one of those places that I just had to get out of and get out to BC. So that was the big thing. When I moved out to Vancouver, I really got into the wellness lifestyle here and the fitness lifestyle, and everyone's walking around and everyone's eating healthy, but it's not like it's a forced thing. It just comes naturally. And at 18 years old, I was like, this is so cool. But I was also kind of like learning so much. So it kind of started off as a fitness journey when I first moved here, and I really was interested in veganism. My last few months of grade 12, veganism was popping all over the place, and people were posting their like raw till 4, and they would only eat raw food till like 4 p.m. and then they would have carbs, and so many documentaries, and I just was like so consumed by it because it was such a big trend, and I was like, this is so interesting, and I want to live this vegan lifestyle. That was on and off for a few years trying to be vegan. Then there's times where I just wouldn't eat red meat. There's times that I would go full force. There was times where I had no diet plan. It was just whatever. But veganism is kind of what got me into the wellness fitness space, being in Vancouver, seeing the options everywhere, and I was intrigued. Then at 19, I started school for nursing, which was crazy. I was in nursing school for a year. I grew up in the hospital. My mom was now in the hospital till she passed, and my sister was in the hospital. And so that's all I knew was hospital and nursing. And in my hometown, they push you into nursing or teaching. If you're good at that, go into nursing or teaching. So I was like, oh, okay, nursing's really good. And I had some other influences too that wanted me to go into nursing. And I realized it's just not for me. And as much as I love the people in my program, I loved learning, I just knew I couldn't spend my life in the hospital. And looking back on it, there's maybe a small part of me that wishes I stuck with nursing, because now being a holistic nutrition student, I love like the science of everything, but I didn't want to be in the hospital. And I know there's other fields you can go into, but life is life. And I was able to go into marketing, and I loved marketing. So I made the move over to Victoria, BC with my boyfriend and attended Camosun College for a marketing diploma. I was in the bachelor's program, but with COVID and everything, we ended up moving back to Vancouver. And I'm like, just let me finish this. And I finished at Langara. And so December 2022, I graduated, which was such a nice feeling. I feel like every student knows, like, you just want to retire the backpack, but now I'm back at school online. So it's different though this time, because it's like I actually know what I want to do. So in between all of that though, I worked at Lululemon. I have worked in the spa industry for 6 years. I worked retail. What else have I done? I did landscaping for a second there. Was not good at it, but I appreciate them hiring me for the time. And have kind of worked doing social media and other things for different spas as well. So a lot of creativity, which has been cool. Working in the spa triggered something in such a great way. I was 20 when I first started working in the spa industry, and just seeing what they were doing was really cool. Learning about clean skincare and learning about different facial techniques that were done back in ancient China and how it helps your immune system. And then also the different coworkers I had that were into spirituality and Reiki and astrology. And one of my dear friends, Rachel, I bless her for telling me all about astrology. I got super into astrology. I still am super into astrology, but she just opened up my world to that. And I'd be like, I'm going through such a stressful day. And then she'd be like, well, right now your sun is in Mercury and Venus is doing this. And I love astrology. I don't know the full like terminology with certain things, but I find it so interesting. And I was like, that is so cool. And then she told me about Reiki and how Reiki is so good for mind, body, spirit. And I'm like, yes, like I want to do this. And I got my Reiki level 1, and just the people you meet along the way in the spa industry, it's so cool. And then when I worked at Lululemon, which if you are a student, work for Lulu. It is, to this day, it was like the best time of my life. It was my last semester of school. I met so many cool people. I met so many cool friends. It was amazing. But being around people who were like into fitness, but then we're also into spirituality. We're also into healthy living and wellness. And, you know, we would go to these different Lulu events to go do yoga in the park on a Thursday. And it was just so much fun. But they brought in a lot of different people. And I used to say it was kind of like I think it's in Rudolph, but it's like the island of like the different toys. Like I forget exactly, but we were just all so unique, and we all just kind of got each other. And I loved that. And I could talk about astrology with people, and I could talk about like, oh, I'm going to a sound bath later, and then be like, oh, I want to come too. Like, when is that? And it was just such a fun atmosphere, and just being around people who are like that, it really just brought out more. And so after I graduated from school, I left Lulu, and it was so much fun, but I had that freak out moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I need my adult job, and like I don't have student loans anymore, and I need to figure it out, and I'm 24, and what's happening? And just had a panic. And I work corporate, and corporate is not for the weak. And I went into it bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like, oh my goodness, I'm going to start as a receptionist, and I'm going to help with the marketing team, and I'll help operations, and I will be this like little admin assistant, and I can make my way up. And I found that it was long. The days were long. It was from 8 to 5, which I know is standard, but when you are just sitting at a desk all day and you can only fill up the coffee pot so many times, you can only send emails so many times, you're trying to find things to fill up your day, you get to a point where you're like, okay, this is exhausting. You go for your hour break, and I would always just go for a walk and just manifest and just think about what I want my life to look like. And it was unique. I left the job 6 months into it to go back to the spa industry, which has been great. I help my mother-in-law with the spa. I help her with the marketing emails. I take on clients. It's been good. But during that time, it's like I had such a high working at Lulu, and it was so much fun. And then I get this adult job, and I'm like, okay, like life's going up. And it just went down. And I was living with my boyfriend and like 10 other people at that time. It was insane. The roommate situation, I would just go to work, go home, hide in my room, hang out with my boyfriend, and just do that. And I'm like, this is just too much. But because it brought me to such a low point, it really kicked off again, like, what do I want my life to look like? And I was doing extra yoga classes, and I was reading more about manifestation, and I was reading The Secret, and I was journaling then. I don't journal now. I'm not a journal girly, but I was just like, what can I do to make me happy? And I wrote down a list of like, how do I want my life to look like? And I wrote down, I want to go to school for holistic nutrition, which I've been wanting to go to school for holistic nutrition for the longest time. And I was like, I want to do that. And maybe one day open up my own wellness center. And I want to be able to help people. And I want to get my yoga certificate. And I want to do all these things. And it's now pushed me now as 26, going to be 27 in June, which is still seems like such a far time away, but it's coming up closer than we think. Like, okay, how do I want to look at my life? And with the podcast, with everything, with wanting to talk about wellness and nutrition and everything, this is the time and place. So that's kind of like the background, how I got here. It's through those few years, and then just the last few months, I'm like, okay, it's time. I want to start 2025 off in such a great foot and do this for myself and for others, and I'm so excited. So diving deep a little bit more, why I chose holistic nutrition and not really going through with the marketing path. I went to school for marketing, like I said, and it was great. But you get to a point, at least in my phase of life, where I'm like, okay, that's great, but I want to do more. And I've had my own personal health journeys with myself and my family. And like this past year, prior to that, I was always interested in it. I was always interested in nutrition and what it can do. And like I said, I dabbled in veganism. But it was always to cure me and fuel me and for my health. And growing up, I was a chronically ill kid. So it started from ages from 3 to 10. Every 4 to 6 weeks on the dot, I would get a fever of 105 plus. And for the first little bit, my parents would take me to the hospital. They'd take me to the doctor, and it was like, kids have fevers. Kids have fevers. And I'd be crying. I was in pain. I just so hot all the time. And it wasn't until we moved to Victoria when I was younger. We only lived there for 2 years, but we, finally saw different specialists. And I saw every specialist under the sun, except for a naturopath, which is interesting because now I finally have a diagnosis after all these years. But I saw every single specialist, and I tried, we tried different diets, but they're like, well, she has no sensitivities. Well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Is it a psychological problem? Is it everything? And it was so many tests, and I missed a lot of school because of it. And I'm very proud of where I am. I'm happy that I was able to graduate and have a diploma. But my grades did suffer, and that was the hard part, where I was just always sick, and I missed so many fun life events. And it was hard just being such an ill child. And then on top of that too, with the fevers, I was also so immune to getting other sicknesses. So if it wasn't a fever, I'd get a cold, but then 2 weeks later, I'd get the fever. And, I broke my arm. Okay, great. That happened. But then I also have a broken arm and I have a fever. Or, I randomly got a staph infection as a child. Don't know how. It just happened. I just appeared one day. And everything else in between. And I had also chronic stomach aches. It got to a point one time, I looked at my dad and I was crying. And I'm like, we need to go to the hospital. And I was like 8 years old. Went to the hospital. Oh, it's nothing. And it was just like, I'm not making this up. Like, and my parents knew I wasn't making this up because I was exhausted from being in the hospital so much. And then at age 10, The fevers finally went away. We don't know how, but they did. But then the stomach ache started coming. And I would wake up every morning with a chronic stomach ache. And I went to the doctor multiple times. And it's anxiety. It's anxiety. You have anxiety. They didn't really do any lab work. There was a time I went to the hospital 3 times in a row, diagnosed me with growing pains, anxiety. And then the pain was so bad that I collapsed. They gave me something for the pain, but still, it was just always stomach aches. And I tried going gluten-free. I tried taking out sugars. I tried everything. I was online reading because no doctor was helping me. And on top of that too, my mom, who passed from brain cancer, my dad's now busy dealing with her. And I'm also looking at stuff from my mom. And then my sister ended up in the hospital, broke her arm. The doctors used infected tools. And so I'm looking for stuff for my sister now. So I was just reading away of like, what can help? What medicines? What's this? Like, how can I get a cure for everybody? For my sister, she's fine now, which is great. My mom passed when I was 15, but it was a long fight of brain cancer. And it was, I miss her every day. She was an amazing mom. But it's stuff like that where she fought hard, but she also, I get that from her, would read, and she would read different things. And I say she lasted so long, 9 years with brain cancer, because of the food that she was eating and her mindset on things. She always journaled. She always would meditate. She would manifest. And even though days were hard, she's like, no, like, I'm going to make it to Christmas, or I'm going to make it to this. I'm going to try to be there. And it was like the last year of her life that she kind of came to peace. She's like, I'm okay now. I've seen you girls grow up as much as I can, and it's okay to go. And so it was peaceful how she left. But that's also one thing too, which I'm like, whoa, like that is like spirituality is so cool. But with me back to my health stuff, it was insane. And even it came into my 20s that I was always sick. And the pain was still there, but I just kind of used Tums and Pepto and other sorts of medicines trying to like deal with it. But then I was like, oh, now I'm back to being always sick. So it's a fever. 2 weeks later, it's a cold. It's bronchitis. It's a flu. It was always something that I got to the point where I'm like, I sound like the boy that cried wolf. And in my 20s as well, I got strep throat back to back to back to back for a year. And the doctors did not want to do tonsil surgery on me because they're like, you're an adult, this is more high risk. But it got to the point where penicillin's not working at all anymore. And the amount of penicillin I took in a year is insane. I finally got my tonsils out. Then I had internal nose surgery 2 years later after that for sinus infections. Then we had COVID, and I was sick all the time during that. It's been a whirlwind of health problems. And it was always like, I'm doing everything right, but my blood work's coming back fine. And it wasn't until this year that I really was like, okay, what is happening with me? And I went to a naturopath, and getting the diagnosis was insane. So I went there, lovely. I go to Clementine Naturopathic Clinic in Vancouver. I love it. It's just so amazing. The girls there are so wonderful. And we did some testing that got sent to the States, and it came back that even with my healthy lifestyle, I eat clean, I have fun, I do everything that I got to do properly to fuel my body. I work out, I did 75 hard, like I barely drink, I don't touch drugs at all, don't want to. And it showed that because of all the antibiotic use as a kid, I have no good gut bacteria. And they also don't know if it's something that I actually could have been born without. And that's why I started getting sick from such a young age. I was a C-section baby. I need that bacteria. I was also born in Limassol, Cyprus. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but just maybe the environment and being so sick. And then from being so sick as a kid, you get to a point where you have to give your kids antibiotics if you're getting fevers of 105 plus every 6 weeks. And especially back in like the early 2000s, like other ways weren't really looked at. So they don't know if it's something I was born without or it's something that was developed, but there is no good bacteria in my body. And that, seeing the charts was crazy to me, because you look at the chart and you see that the little red, there's the green side to yellow to red, and then the little marker was off the chart. And I was like, that is wild. So since working with her, getting on proper supplements, we changed up my diet a bit. I was still eating pretty healthy, but now we're just really focusing on like, let's get as much as we can as possible. I have felt amazing. It's been such a big difference energy-wise, health-wise. It's crazy that my boyfriend gets sick. I don't get sick anymore. And it's like I finally have mental clarity. My brain doesn't feel foggy. I have more energy. I'm happier. It's crazy what's all connected from the gut. And I finally feel like a person again. It felt like for so long I was just walking in this cloud and just going day by day with pain and people not understanding it, or people thinking I'm faking or trying to be a victim. But now it's like, no, I finally get it. So one of the things I can take from this year is go see a naturopath if you can. I know it's expensive. Not everyone can do it. It took me 26 years to finally go see one. And my sister, who has PCOS, I have pushed her to go see one too. And it's something that's like finally have results. And I left the clinic in happy tears, being like, I know now. And when I talked to them too at the beginning, initial visit, they sat with me until I had no more questions. They were like, I even asked them like, oh, should I get my hormones tested, or for fertility stuff? Like, how does that look? And they broke it down for me and said, I don't have to worry about it right now. I can do that if I want to, but everything was listened to. And with other doctors who have just rushed me in and out, and all the doctors that said, oh, I just have anxiety. Yes, I have anxiety, but I shouldn't be in chronic pain every single day because of anxiety. And I finally have an answer. So that was a little bit of my health journey too, of also why getting holistic nutrition and also diving deep and trying to learn more as well. And it's crazy because, I was a kid and I was asking my parents, should we eat organic? Like, I know apparently organic's better for you, but is organic going to fix me? And they're kind of like, oh, well, I don't know. Organic's like expensive. Now everything's expensive. And it's just trying to figure out things, and knowing what's going on in my body is crazy, but also knowing that nutrition also heals as well. So that's been cool. That's been like the highlight of my year. So that's just, a little bit about me and a little bit about my life, a beginner introduction to who I am and everything. So, my cat is wanting attention now. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you for coming on to the first episode of Carolyn's Wellness Corner. I'm so, so excited to see where this podcast takes us, the journey, everything. Feel free to reach out. My Instagram is Carolyn Ella Mac. It's just MAC. And DM, comment, tips, advice, all that jazz. So have a wonderful rest of your week, wonderful rest of your day, and be kind to yourself. No one is perfect. And enjoy. Bye, guys.